I ended up missing the first part of this video, but really all you've missed is me ripping this piece of plywood into strips. What I've got is the bottom piece of plywood is a standard piece of 3/4 inch plywood. I use that as a base. And the top pieces are 3/4 inch red oak plywood that I've ripped into some strips. Some are thinner. The thickest they get, the majority of them are 5 inches wide. And some of those 5-inch wide ones are not cut to full length. And this is to break it up so it's not just a monotony of 5-inch wide strips going across the countertop here. I'm just using some tight bond wood glue and a brad nailer to attach the strips to that main piece of plywood, that base piece of plywood. I waited to trim this last piece so I could mark it and cut it so it fit just right. The first countertop is 4 foot 9 inches long, and this second countertop here is 8 foot 2 inches long. I'm using a tight bond wood glue to hold these down. Now the squeeze bottle is tight bond 3, the gallon refill is a tight bond 2. It's just what I had available to me at the store. They didn't have the tight bond 2 in the squeeze bottle, and they didn't have the tight bond 3 in the gallon. I don't know which one's better. I guess it's preference, but that's all they had. I needed the squeeze bottle so I could squeeze it out easier than just pouring it out of a gallon jug. And now I'm mixing it, so I guess I've got like a tight bond 2.5. If you look at this countertop closely, you can see a board that's lifted up. I don't know if it was a piece of sawdust or something that was underneath it when I nailed it down. I didn't see this until the glue had already set, so I let it go, knowing that the epoxy would be thick enough to level out the whole countertop. I have an ebony water-based varathane stain to make the red oak darker. We want a dark countertop. I haven't done much staining, so I really don't know what I'm doing, but it seems to turn out okay with me just wiping it on with this rag and wiping the majority of it back off. I've got some blue pine I milled out about 10 months ago, this whole stack. I'm going to use some of this as a trim around the top of the countertop there. This is where this countertop differs from the last countertop we made. The last one didn't have a piece of trim around it, and I think I'm going to like this a little bit better. I probably should have routed the edges after sending it through the thickness planer to get it down to the thickness that I wanted. But since I already routed the edges, I just took the majority of the material off the back side and then sent it through one time with top side up, and then of course sanding it down to smooth it all out. Again, just using glue and nails to glue the blue pine to the edge of the countertop, and this will cover up that plywood look on the very edge of the countertop. I didn't want to stain the pine because our cabinets are dark, and our cabinet doors are going to be blue pine, and I think having this dark countertop with the blue pine edge will kind of bring our countertop and our cabinets together. The first layer of epoxies is the thin layer. Let it soak in real good. It helps seal the boards so there's not as many air bubbles that kind of come out from all these cracks and from out of the wood itself. I did let the first layer cure overnight, so it needs to be sanded before you can pour something over it. 220 grit is the go-to sandpaper for sanding epoxy between coats. So that's what I sanded mine with, is 220 grit. If you don't let epoxy fully cure, you don't have to sand between coats. You let the epoxy get to like a tacky stage and you pour another layer over it, they'll adhere together and basically become one. It is on the colder side right now, this time of year, and I don't have a lot of heat in this little room, so I end up torching the epoxy a lot to help get those air bubbles out, get them to the top, let them pop, and let that epoxy kind of self-level over this countertop. This epoxy dries to the point that it can be lightly used in 24 hours, and it's fully cured in about a week. You can see some streaking in the countertop. I think those are micro bubbles that just didn't come out of the epoxy when I torched it. Unfortunately, it's going to stay that way until I figure out how to fix it or remake the countertop. This shorter countertop turned out beautiful. Crystal clear, and you can see the reflection of the OSB shows you how flat it is. If you liked the video, hit that thumbs up button for me. Really helps out my channel. Until next time, go make something.